Earlier this week, we turned to David Webb about the question of race in the Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman case. He's the host of the David Webb's show on Sirius Radio, co-founder of Tea Party 365. He's joining me on the phone right now. David, thanks for being with us.
Good to talk to you, Jamie.
David, let me ask you your reaction to these comments by the president. First of all, the fact that the decision came down nearly a week ago. Why today?
Today has all the appearances of a political insertion into what's going on because we have the rallies that are coming up this weekend across the country. The president's the head. The Department of Justice reports to him. That's the branch of the executive. They're following up on a federal civil rights, or they say they're looking into potential federal civil rights charges, but yet they have very weak evidence since they didn't find anything in Florida to charge under state law, and the FBI found no evidence of this. My initial reaction is that this is pure politics. The president with the presidential microphone inserting himself into this situation once again. I'm not that surprised. I frankly expected something. This, I think, caught me off guard like many Americans.
It seems to me, David, the president went even further beyond this case and its result, the outcome and the aftermath, as he calls it, talking about the experience of African-American men in general. Let's listen to some of that.
I think it's important to recognize that the African-American community is looking at this issue through a set of experiences and a history that doesn't go away. You know, there are very few African-American men in this country who haven't had the experience of being followed when they were shopping in a department store. That includes me. There are very, very few African-American men who haven't had the experience of walking across the street and hearing the locks click on the doors of cars. That happens to me, at least before I was a senator. There are very few African Americans who haven't had the experience of getting on an elevator and a woman clutching her purse nervously and holding her breath until she had a chance to get off. That happens often.
David, I have to ask you this, because the president went so far as starting this by saying that Trayvon Martin could have been him. He says the new generation is different, and he wonders whether Trayvon Martin would have had the benefit of stand your ground, which Greg correctly brought up didn't even apply in the case, if he had been armed, that the outcome would have actually been different if Trayvon had been white. Does that calm any of the expected rallies that you raise, or is it really stirring the pot on a case that was decided a week ago? And at the same time, he compliments the judge running a fair trial, the defense and prosecution for presenting their case properly, and the jury for following instructions that were proper.
This is President Obama, Jamie, doing what President Obama has done best since his days organizing. He wants all the bites at the apple. He presents one side, then he presents all sides, so he can placate the base and the people he needs to play to. And that's what I find disingenuous about this. The president puts forth the idea that the black community is one monolithic block, that most of us, black people, have been profiled. Well, that's anecdotal at best. What supports that? I'm not saying it doesn't happen. People clutch purses. They clutch purses when punk rockers who were white with dog collars and spiked hair and tattoos walks by. And what the president has done is taken us backwards, not forwards. There is racism. You can't pretend that racism doesn't exist in America. But you can't pretend that racism exists everywhere. And the president is doing no different than Jesse Jackson when he calls Florida an apartheid state. He could have made a very clear statement. He could have talked about the concerns of Americans, because if there is a white-black dynamic, there is a white side to that dynamic.
You know what, though,
David?
David?
What they're interested in.
David, you know what? There may be anti-Semitism, too, in this country. There may be in Europe as
Yes,
well.
there
That
is.
may exist. There may be prejudice against elderly workers who are desperate to get jobs in this economy because they're older. You're an African-American man At this point, was there any benefit to saying that the African-American community is very impacted negatively by this decision? Does the president not believe that white moms and whites in this country also felt for Trayvon Martin's family?
Well, they can't have you believe that, Jamie. They can't have you believe that there are many Americans who fall on both sides of this or different sides of this issue. Because if you do that, then you can't play into the black-white racist dynamic. And that's what's really disingenuous about this from the president. These are carefully thought-out remarks.
What does he get from that, David?
Targeted remarks.
What's the upside for the president today making these comments as he did?
It divides us. And this is something he has done very well as a candidate. This is something he has done well over his time as an activist and an organizer. You divide people into groups. You say blacks, this is your issue. Hispanics, this is your issue. Women, this is your issue. And then he amalgamates their guilt, their fear, and this becomes a voting block for his agenda. This is really what it's about. It's politics. Could the president have been more responsible? Absolutely. I wish presidents wouldn't inject themselves, regardless of party, into everything. But this is no longer the current situation. This is a president who said the Warren courts didn't go far enough. They didn't wander into redistributive justice. This is social engineering. This is about social justice as he sees it, not about the justice system as it exists and as it has worked.
All right, David, great to have you here on short notice because this was a surprise from the president to take the podium. Thank you so much.